Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back. I'm Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and your host of this episode of the Networking RX podcast. Thanks for listening, subscribing, and referring others. Today we're going to talk about referrals. Actually, we're going to talk about the lack of referrals. Many of you out there who are networking, you network because you have a business and you want to grow a business. And one of the concerns that you run into is referrals. And I get this question all the time. Why am I not getting referrals? And I tell people there are three reasons, and only three reasons, you're not getting referrals. And we're going to go into each of these, but the three reasons are: one, lack of know, like, and trust; two, the inability of the people in your network to recognize opportunities for you; and then the third one is simply people in your network knowing you, liking you, and trusting you, and having the ability to recognize opportunities, but they have an inability to engage others in conversation. In other words, they have trouble talking about what it is you do and why you're the solution to whatever their problem is. So let's dig into each one of these. The first one, the first reason why you might not be getting referrals is simply this: there's a lack of know, like, and trust. There are obviously three components to that: know, like, and trust. We're going to talk about these individually, but know that they're somewhat interrelated. So when we talk about know, if you're not getting referrals, it might be a situation where people just don't know you well enough. Just because you walk into a room and people have met you for the first time doesn't mean you're going to get referrals. I'll have people who call me from time to time, cold calls, or people just meet me for the first time, and they'll talk about their product or their service, and they'll almost be expecting that you make a buying decision right then and there. And they'll ask, well, why not? Then I'll say, I don't know you. And then they'll kind of repeat their name and explain who they are. Well, know goes a little deeper than just me knowing your name and me knowing your business. I want to kind of get a sense about you. And that getting a sense about you is not going to happen in an initial meeting. It's just not. I don't think I'm unique in that. I think most people operate that way. When I deal with somebody, I don't expect a buying decision right out of the gate. I don't expect somebody to refer me just because they have met me. It takes time. So the first thing is that people want to get to know you. The second thing is they want to get a sense that they like you. And again, that takes time. It's not going to happen right away. They want to kind of see what type of a person you are. And if they don't like you for whatever reason, they're not going to do business with you. They're not going to refer you. I'm not advocating that you be anything other than you. But if whoever you are is something that they don't like, it's not going to happen. They're not going to refer business to you. They're not going to do business with you. Again, just be yourself. And if you're yourself and you're a good person, chances are most people will like you. There will be some who, for whatever reason, don't like you. Don't sweat it. The vast majority of people will like you. But know that that's a component as to why somebody might not refer you. All that said, here's a quick tip. If you're looking to get people to like you, my opinion is that the surest, best way to get people to like you is to help other people. It's hard to not like somebody who's helping other people. It's almost impossible to not like somebody who's helping you. So if you go out of your way to try and help people, and I'm not saying you need to refer them tons of business, but certainly take an interest in them, take an interest in what matters to them, how you can help move them forward, they're going to like you. It's really hard not to like somebody who is doing those things. So when it comes to the like aspect of it, I think there's always there is a simple solution. It's not necessarily an easy solution, but take an interest in them, take an interest in helping them, and they'll certainly take an interest in you and like you in return. So getting to be known takes time. Liking, really about focusing on other people and trying to help them. The third component to the first reason, know, like, and trust, why you wouldn't get referrals is obviously trust. And trust is a complicated thing. It's not as simple as 1 + 1. You need to really stop and kind of think through, why is it somebody might not be trusting me? Is it something that I've done? Maybe I haven't been as reliable as I need to be. I've seen situations where people are consistently late, consistently unreliable at being at meetings, and then wondering why people aren't trusting them and feeling like, well, it's not really a big deal. I had a reason as to why I was late. I tell them it doesn't really matter. The underlying reason doesn't matter in the long run to people. They just kind of judge the black and the white in over time. Maybe in an instance they might say, okay, yeah, traffic was tough. Traffic was congested. They had trouble getting to the meeting. That's why they were late, or had trouble following through, or missed the deadline for whatever reason. People will give you a pass 1 or 2 times, but when it becomes a consistent pattern, that becomes who you are, and they'll formulate their opinion as to whether they can trust you. People also draw conclusions on how you conduct yourself. I've seen people who have been overly opinionated with respect to politics or religion, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't have an opinion about those things. You're welcome to have an opinion about those things. Actually, you're welcome to share your opinion about those sorts of things, but just know that people make an assessment with respect to those things. And if you're somebody with a really strong political opinion and you're going to voice that political opinion, people have every right to be uncomfortable referring you or doing business with you, certainly referring you, not knowing what might come out of your mouth. And that's you just have to accept that if you want to be somebody who's open with your opinions. There's nothing wrong with that. I have my opinions. I tend to keep my opinions to myself. That's just me. The other thing with respect to trust that you really need to kind of take into consideration is trust doesn't build at the same rate for everybody. And here's a great example. If you're a florist, it's easy for people to trust that. I mean, obviously they're not going to do their whole wedding based on a first impression, but somebody will send flowers. They'll take a flyer on sending flowers to somebody. So there doesn't need to be that great degree of trust if you're a florist. But if you're a financial advisor and you're working with people's 6-7-figure retirements, it's going to take a degree of trust before people do business with you or refer you. They're going to move slowly. It's that trust is not going to build at the same rate as if you're a florist or something else where there's a low dollar amount. The stakes aren't as high. And so you need to keep that in mind. And sometimes people will be looking around and saying, wow, everybody's trusting one another. Why not me? It's just taking a little more time based upon what it is you do and the stakes that are there. That's why, again, going back to my florist example, somebody's willing to order flowers, order a dozen roses and send them across town just on a phone call. But if they're going to be spending thousands of dollars for a wedding, they're going to be a little more cautious with respect to who they're doing business with and how business is conducted. They're going to want to probably get some recommendations and talk to some people. So the first reason why someone might not be getting referrals is a lack of know, like, and trust. The second thing is that people can know you, like you, and trust you and still not refer you. And it might be because they don't have the ability to recognize opportunities for you. The great example I use all the time is when I first was in what is now AmSpirit Business Connections. I was in a chapter with a woman, Gina Winterstein, who's actually one of our franchisees now. Gina and I were in the chapter together. Gina joined the chapter the same week I joined the chapter. I got to know Gina. She's easy to get to know. She's a great person. I like Gina. We have a lot in common. We're both somewhat newly married, had young kids. We've talked about it. Our kids have kind of grown up, not together, but at the same time. And I got to trust Gina. I got to trust Gina right away because Gina is one of these people that if she says she's going to be somewhere, she'll be there. If she says she's going to do something, she's going to do it. And if something were to falter, she would let you know ahead of time. So she was totally reliable. So I knew Gina. I liked Gina. I trusted Gina. I didn't give Gina any referrals. And the reason I didn't give her any referrals wasn't because of that. It was because I had no idea what she did. She was a telecommunications consultant. She talked about it, and there are certainly things that she fixed in time, but I didn't understand what it was. And early on in my career, I was an attorney. Early on in my career, I was working out of my house, so didn't have a need for any telecommunications. But when I moved out of my house into my first office and showed up there, plugged the phone into the wall, and nothing was happening, I contacted Gina immediately and said, "Hey, is this something you could help me with?" And so right away, she started to explain more. I could see it firsthand as to what the opportunities were. And that made it much easier for me to start to recognize opportunities for her. And so if you're not getting referrals and you feel like, okay, people know, like, and trust me, maybe start to ask, are they able to recognize opportunities for me? How am I doing with respect to giving them examples? Am I dumbing it down enough? And maybe actually have that conversation with them and quiz them. Just don't tell them what you do. Don't tell them when you do it. Don't just tell them things. Just ask them, okay, do you understand? And get them talking. And once they start talking, you'll get the sense as to what they understand or don't understand, and you can start to fill in the blanks. You can start to talk about, hey, these would be good opportunities for me. So again, there are two reasons. The first two reasons why you wouldn't get a referral is people don't know, like, and trust you. And again, that's kind of a three-part one step. And then the second thing is they're not able to recognize opportunities for you. And I see that as being a big problem within AmSpirit, just within the business world itself. And a lot of times people will say, well, I'm easy to give referrals. This is so simple. Anybody's good for me. And what I like to tell people is, if you think it's easy, if you think you're easy to give referrals to, that's probably your first mistake. Don't assume that it's easy. When I was in a chapter and I was an attorney, I thought that, oh, this is easy. Everybody knows what an attorney does. And in reality, they don't. They have their impressions from what they see on TV, from their personal experiences. Beyond criminal type stuff, most people don't understand what a business attorney does. And so once I took the time to really educate people on how to recognize opportunities for me as a business attorney, then the referrals started to pick up. So lack of know, like, and trust, and inability to recognize opportunities. The third is that they're unsure as to how to engage in conversations with people. They may know, like, and trust you, and they may be able to recognize opportunities, but they might not know what to say. I was once at a chapter meeting, and there was an individual who was talking to somebody before a meeting, and before the meeting essentially said, hey, I loved your presentation last week. The presentation was on life insurance and the uses of life insurance. Obviously, the one member really knew, like, and trusted the life insurance person, but was saying, I was at a party over the weekend, and somebody had said something that was perfect. It would have been a perfect candidate for you. In other words, I recognized the opportunity, but I didn't refer you. They didn't ask me if they needed life insurance. And so there was the problem. They knew, liked, and trusted, recognized opportunity, but were unable to engage the person in conversation. How do you segue into a conversation about life insurance? And that's the third step that life insurance person needed to empower this particular member with. And so that's a very critical component to getting referrals, is making sure that the people are able to not do what you do, but be conversant enough that they could start to talk about the opportunities. For example, back to the life insurance situation, perhaps the person at the party is talking about going into business with somebody, and then there's a need for life insurance for a buy-sell agreement, to be able to say to the person with the new partnership, what happens if something happens to your partner? How do you guys have that settled? I was at a meeting, or over coffee, I was meeting with a life insurance person, and they said that, there's a way that you can fund the buyout of your particular partner. And I don't know if people would be comfortable with that or not, but again, the life insurance person needs to empower the people sitting around the room, or the power of the people in their network, to not just recognize opportunities, but how to talk about them. And not sell them, but just how to bring them up in conversation so people know that there's a particular issue there. For example, like in the business world, when I was out as a business attorney, one of the things that I advocated was being incorporated or creating an LLC. It was a protection. It protected people's personal assets. There are certainly tax benefits to it as well, but there are some protections there to protect people's personal assets in case something happens in the business. If you get sued in your business, then it kind of stops at the business and doesn't go on to the personal assets. And so just trying to educate people on that, getting people to recognize the opportunity. If you see somebody going into business, recognize that's an opportunity and they should be incorporated. But recognition is not enough. I need to empower my network to be able to talk to people to say, you know what, you ought to think about incorporating your business because there are some potential pitfalls to operating as a sole proprietor. And then going from there, at some point, referring them to me. But just being able to have that conversation with people and segue into the notion of incorporating or creating an entity, an LLC or incorporating. So again, if you're not getting referrals, there are 3 reasons, and really only 3 reasons why they're not happening. And you need to kind of explore that in your mind. 1, there's a lack of know, like, and trust. 2, there's an inability for the people in your network to be able to recognize opportunities to refer you on. And then the third thing is they're not quite empowered enough to be able to talk about what it is you do or segue what it is you do into conversations with others. Stop and think on these. Consider these as you work within your network or you work within your networking groups. Let me finish today's episode with this.
This is Tom Anderson. I'm the founder and CEO of AcceleWeb. We are a 15-person website design firm and search engine marketing company. We help our clients with websites, search engine marketing, and a lot of web hosting as well. At AcceleWeb, we've achieved great success through professional networking. And part of our reason for success is that I'm a franchisee of AmSpirit Business Connections. You see, a few days each week, I commit a couple hours to building my AmSpirit franchise. The rest of the time, I'm all about growing AcceleWeb. The neat thing is that my AmSpirit franchise helps AcceleWeb, and AcceleWeb helps feed my AmSpirit franchise. If you're interested in learning more about the AmSpirit Business Connections franchise opportunity, contact Frank Agin using the email at the end of this program. If you want to learn more about my experiences as a franchisee, or if I could answer any questions about websites or search engine marketing, email me at tom.anderson@excelaweb.com. That's EXCELLEWEB.com.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.